As ever, it's hard to know what Donald Trump is going to do. We are hours away now from this deadline that he has given the Iranians. There's always the possibility that it's postponed again, but it's very hard to see how the US and Iran are going to get to some sort of a deal in the next few hours. And there is a real fear in this region that we're headed for a major escalation in the war.
And what's clear about this as deadlines move around is that both sides seem to be claiming to be winning. Is that even a sensible question to ask who's winning this war?
Both sides can credibly claim to be at least achieving the things that they are setting out to do. The Iranians have been fighting this asymmetric war against the global economy, and their goals have been to be resilient, to keep fighting, and to inflict enormous costs on the region and on the world. And they've been able to do that. Just in the past few days, we've seen Iran attack a major petrochemical plant in Saudi Arabia, gas fields in Abu Dhabi, oil refineries in Bahrain and Kuwait. The damage to the global economy is going to linger. The Americans and the Israelis, they are trying to batter not just Iran's military capabilities, but increasingly Iran's economy as well. If you look at Iran's missile program, for example, yes, it is still able to fire missiles at Israel and the Gulf countries, but its ability to replenish those missiles after the war is in doubt because there has been a systemic campaign of airstrikes against the factories, the supply chain that produces missiles in Iran. So they're both doing operationally what they set out to do, but they're not achieving their strategic aims yet. The Americans want to compel Iran essentially to surrender, to make a deal on favorable terms for the United States. Iran, for its part, wants to stop this war and wants to prevent future wars without having to make major concessions, and they haven't been able to achieve that. And so the narrative on both sides is that they're winning, but in practice, in strategic terms, no one is winning yet.
So this narrative of both sides claiming to be winning is what you'd expect in any war, I suppose.
It is. I think what's striking about this one, though, is that the two sides are essentially fighting parallel wars, right? America and Israel are fighting Iran, and then Iran is fighting mostly its Gulf neighbors and the world economy. And so both sides can credibly claim to be winning their own war, even as they are simultaneously losing the other one. I think, and we saw that over the long weekend with this drama around the American F-15 that was shot down over Iran. The Iranians then started scouring the country looking for the two downed airmen. America set into motion what sounds like a very complicated rescue operation, and it was a success in the end for the Americans. They brought back their two personnel without any loss of life on their part. It was a success for them. It was an embarrassment for Iran, which wasn't able to capture the pilot and the weapons officer. On Monday, we saw Donald Trump give this press conference at the White House, flanked by some of his advisors. And it sounded almost like he was giving a mission accomplished speech, as if the entire purpose of this war had been about trying to rescue these two airmen. Meanwhile, the Iranians tried to spin this as a failure for America because a number of American planes were blown up during the rescue operation. This was a moment when, a very rare moment in this conflict where the two sides were actually directly fighting each other instead of fighting these parallel wars. And they both looked for a way to spin it somehow to their advantage.
But looking through this spin, Greg, where do you see the balance of power at the moment?
I'm not sure we can say anyone has it yet. I mean, the costs on all sides have been enormous. On the American side, beyond the aircraft that were destroyed over the weekend in this rescue operation, America has lost a number of aerial refueling tankers. It's lost an E-3 AWACS radar airplane. It has less than 20 of them in its arsenal. So losing one of them is a major loss. And when you speak to defense sources in the Gulf, they tell you the damage at some of the bases that the U.S. uses here, Al Udeid in Qatar, Prince Sultan in Saudi Arabia, other bases. It's extensive. It's far more extensive than has been reported. So there is a blow to the American military. Stockpiles of interceptors and standoff munitions and other things that the U.S. is burning through at a very rapid clip. And that is going to have implications, if not for this war right now, for future wars, for America's ability to fight future wars. Gulf states themselves are also suffering, obviously, enormous costs from this. We're all focused on what's happening to the oil and gas infrastructure in the region because of that, what that means for the global economy. But you look beyond that, the damage to business in Gulf states, where this war has scared off travelers, tourists, in some cases, even residents of Gulf countries who have left and may come back after the war, may not come back after the war. Governments are having to earmark billions and billions of dollars for economic support for struggling businesses in their countries. So there's a huge amount of economic damage, and then there's reputational damage for Gulf countries, which no longer look like oases of stability in the region, and those costs are going to be with them for a long time to come.
But it has to be said that there is a great deal of damage to Iran as well at the same time.
I think increasingly what's clear is that a long war is not just going to batter Iran's military capabilities, it is going to undermine the very foundations of Iran's economy and the Iranian state. America and Israel have attacked the largest steel mills in the country. They've attacked its natural gas fields, its main petrochemical processing plant, one of its most prestigious universities. Losing those steel mills, for example, the best case scenario is that they will be out of commission for a year. That means one of Iran's largest sources of non-oil export revenue will not be producing. It usually brings in about $7 billion a year in export revenue. That will be cut off. It also fuels a number of other domestic industries. Iran makes lots of cars. It has a big construction industry. All of that is downstream from steel production, and all of that is going to be affected. And we're already hearing reports of companies in Iran that are laying off workers, furloughing workers, because they will not have access to raw materials anymore. And so the consequences of all of this are going to ripple through the Iranian economy, which even before the war had very high unemployment rate, had inflation that was running close to 50%. Annual inflation now above 50%. It was around 52% from the latest figures in March. Food prices going up even faster. Add to that thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of families that no longer have an income. And the economic consequences of this are going to be enormous. And this is before we get to Donald Trump's threats of knocking out the Iranian power grid.
Well, exactly that. This sounds on both sides like a fairly unsustainable situation. And when we've spoken to you in the past about this, we've sort of laid out three possible paths: escalation, staying the course as it is, or finding a way out, finding peace. At this moment, which do you think is most likely?
Escalation seems like the most likely path that we're going down. There has been another last-ditch effort to try and get to a deal. The latest proposal that's being discussed would be for a temporary truce lasting maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and then the US and Iran would use that time to try and negotiate a permanent ceasefire. The Iranians are not really interested in that. They want a permanent end, not just to this war, but to their whole state of conflict with the United States. And so the idea that they might agree to reopen the Strait of Hormuz in exchange for a few weeks of truce and peace talks that may or may not succeed, it's very hard to see them doing that. So I think we are headed down a path where this is likely to escalate. And if Donald Trump follows through on his threats, if he does what he said he's going to do, first of all, that will almost certainly qualify as a war crime. Bombing one power plant can be justified in military terms. Bombing an entire country's electric grid as a way to pressure it into making a deal, that is very much beyond the pale in terms of international law. If he does this, the consequences for Iran will be profound to its economy, to public health, and Iran, again, does not have the resources to rebuild an electric grid if it is destroyed by the Americans. Obviously, Iran has threatened to retaliate in a similar fashion against Gulf states, which has always been the doomsday scenario for governments in this region, not just power plants, but water desalination facilities. If those things are successfully attacked, you're talking about entire cities in the Gulf that could very quickly become uninhabitable. So that's what we're on the precipice of right now. All the damage that we've seen to the region and to the global economy, if Trump goes ahead with these threats, that is likely to become exponentially worse.
Sobering stuff. Gregg, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Jason.